This is the Editor's Half Hour. Step into the life of an editor for 30 minutes as we discuss the craft of editing, industry trends, and editorial resources. Your host is co-founder and CEO of Peak Publishing Inc., Nadia Jaja Pupa. She is experienced in all facets of the publishing industry, from editing to design, and works with corporate clients and self-published authors. Nadia and her guests are about to share powerful insights and stories on what it takes to be an editor. And this is your host, Nadia Jaja Pupa.
Half hour. Today we're talking about emotional labor. There's a lot of questions about this topic. This is something that is highly relevant for editors because it applies to everything we do. So today I have a wonderful guest, Isabella Furth. She is a co-past president of the San Diego Professional Editors Network, and we both were on the board together. So we go way back. We've got this, I really have to play it cool today. I have to be honest with you because I've been wanting Bella on the podcast for so long and it's finally here. So I'm super excited. So welcome, Bella. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy you did this.
Thank you. I'm so glad we finally made this work after all this time.
I know, after all this time. And I have to go back in time because when I first joined SD Pen, your presentation, you gave this presentation on emotional labor. This was one of the first program meetings that I attended. And you shared so many awesome things. Obviously, your presentation style was awesome. So many awesome things to say. But the stories that you shared in that presentation stuck with me. And I remembered them several years later. And this has been in the back of my mind for so long that I really want to revisit this topic. So again, welcome. And please, introduce yourself and share with the listeners the types of projects you do, the types of editing things that you do.
Well, thanks so much. My name's Isabella. I go by Bella. I am the director of a very small one-person editorial shop called Bluefish Editorial Services. I work primarily in the academic space. I do mostly academic books and monographs, working for professors at universities and colleges, and mostly in the humanities and the social sciences. So it's a pretty specialized niche. And I do a mix of kinds of editing. A lot of what I'm doing right now is primarily developmental and some substantive editing. I also do a little bit of copy editing, occasional proofreading, but the heart of the business right now is in the developmental space. So really kind of working with authors to get their book proposal together or to go from a dissertation to a published monograph. I love it. It is the most exciting work in the world, and my clients are terrific. They are brilliant and working on such interesting and important stuff. I really feel privileged to be able to work with them.
Oh, that's so awesome. And not only are you in a space that is highly specialized, but the people that you work with, the clients they must be so passionate about the subject matter that they're writing on. And then the fact that you're doing developmental editing. So it's like deep, you're in it, right? You're just in it.
Yes.
This is.
Yes. Where do I end? Where does the project begin? It's
You are full on in it, and I love it.
Yeah.
So you're one of the best people really to talk about this topic, which is emotional labor.
Right.
And so,
right.
like I mentioned before, you gave your presentation, shared so many great things. I didn't realize until I pulled up your presentation notes, the files, that you actually presented. I knew you presented at ACES, but I didn't know you presented with Heather Saunders and Sarah Gray. So so tell me about, how did that come to fruition? How did you connect with these wonderful women and then know that you wanted to talk and cover this topic?
So this actually came out of my very first ACES conference, which was in 2017,
Okay.
when I went to a panel presentation by Heather Saunders, which
Oh,
was about kind of how do you connect yourself with the profession. And I was only if I was like maybe 5 years into my career as a freelancer, and one of the things she said was, "Well, give presentations, and if you see somebody who gives a really interesting presentation, tell them so, and maybe see if you can do a presentation with them." And I took this as an invitation.
oh, I love
So
it.
I kind of grabbed her in the hall and said, "I really liked your presentation. That was so awesome. I've got so many things I'm thinking about it, and it's really resonating with me in all these ways. And I have an idea because I had been thinking a lot about the sort of emotional work of being an editor, and partly it was because I was really kind of sinking into this academic niche, and I was starting to notice a whole lot of things that were happening in the course of that work that I hadn't really been fully prepared for.
Okay,
And
wow.
I was like, I want to think about this more.
Yes.
You've just given this fascinating presentation, and she said, I know a third person who might be interested in this, and that was
Sarah
Sarah Gray.
Gray.
So we
Okay.
put it together as a panel.
Okay.
I talked about the sort of the broader framework of emotional labor.
Mhm.
Sarah talked about boundaries, and she put
Okay.
together this fabulous sort of taxonomy of clients and the kind
Oh,
of
wow.
specific kinds of labor that they might be asking of you.
Okay.
And then Heather did a section on self-care and sort of how do you,
Wonderful.
so it's really all of those things
Wonderful.
that we're
Yes.
talking about.
Okay.
And it was really terrific to present with
I
them,
love it.
and it was very well received. And I have been kind of thinking about this ever since in my
Yeah.
practice as an editor. And yeah, that's
I
it.
love that. I really love that. And I'll have to name drop them in the show notes. So Heather is now the president of ACES.
She is indeed.
Sarah Gray, I think she won a Robinson Prize. I can't remember
Hmm.
which year. So they're both really, really great. And what a wonderful experience to have a presentation on this. So okay, let's get into this. So what is
Yes.
what is it? What is emotional
Yes.
labor?
What is this
Is
thing that
this
we're talking about?
right? So is it like emotional, like I'm offended by punctuation emotional? What is emotional labor?
So the term,
Yes.
it was coined by a sociologist of labor named Arlie Hochschild,
Okay.
and probably I think back in the 80s, and she really defined it fairly narrowly, which is it is the labor that you do, the demand that is part of your work. You cultivate, present, and elicit a particular emotion in the people that you're working for or with, so that you are being sort of held accountable for. So her classic example is a flight attendant,
Okay.
whose job involves making a passenger feel comfortable, making a passenger sort of be willing to comply with the
I
rules,
see.
like you don't smoke in the bathroom, that kind of thing. And but it also, the term has gotten much more broad
Mm,
over the years since she since she coined it. And so, from kind of moderating your own emotions in order to meet the expectations of a job, it also has expanded to include relationship work, how to trying to protect the feelings of others as part of your job. It also has expanded to include caring work, again, as part of your job,
okay.
where you're sustaining relationships, where you are sort of cultivating emotional networks, making people feel safe, making people feel secure,
Okay.
and kind of giving people, in the broadest sense, the sense that they matter.
Yeah.
And so, editors are doing all of these
Oh,
things.
yeah.
We're sort of presenting an affect. We are of, experience, of calm, of competence. We are trying to help our clients occupy a particular emotional space in terms of feeling their own confidence, their own sense of energy, their ability to do the work of writing. We are doing relationship work
Oh,
all the
yeah. Oh,
time
yeah.
in the editor-client relationship, and we are doing a surprising amount of, really emotional support work
We
as
are.
part of
Yeah.
because of the nature of the editor-client relationship.
Mhm.
Um, so, I mean, my big thing
Yeah.
is that this is what editors do. This
Yes.
is part of the package.
It really is.
And um, while emotional labor often gets a bad rap,
Yeah.
it is denigrated sometimes as well. It's not really work. Or because really what
Right.
your job is to move the commas around, right? And so this is just
We're
this is
just
just
robots, right? We have no
right,
emotions.
exactly. It is often seen as
Mm.
women's work.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is often unrecognized, unnamed, and it is often uncompensated.
Mhm.
And my idea, though, is that it's actually so important to what we do as editors that we should be able to name it, and we should be able to embrace it, and we should be able to consent to it. To say, yes, this is something that I am doing as part of my job,
Right.
to have healthy boundaries around it. And this is the key: we need to get paid for it.
Yes.
That is, that is an absolutely essential component
Yeah.
of the work that we do.
Yeah.
So
There's so much
I
there.
go ahead.
Well, this is so as you were talking, you really sparked so many ideas in my mind because I've heard, and I know you've probably heard other editors say this. There are copy editors. There are copy editors who also do what you do, which is developmental editing. You're offering the support to the authors because you want to. And I've seen in online chats and other places in public, forums, editors saying things like, "Well, I'm not a cheerleader," or "I am not a hand holder. I will not hold hands." So they're setting those boundaries, which again, it could be good and bad depending on what the client is expecting of them.
Right.
But that term cheerleader or handholder, I mean, if you're presenting yourself as a consultant and a book coach, I mean that is the emotional labor. Is that right? That there's that emotional aspect to the job where you're offering that support and safe space for those clients.
It doesn't have to take the form of hand holding
Okay.
and cheerleading.
Yeah.
If that's not how you interact with your clients, that's fine. You're still doing that work, because really at the heart of the editor relationship is you are understanding them, whatever shape that takes.
Okay.
You are engaging in an act of imaginative sympathy. Like,
Okay.
you are trying to get yourself into their head and understand what exactly it is they are trying to
I
say.
see.
So that is,
I
I
love
mean,
that. I-
it
no,
doesn't
I'm
mean you're patting them on the head and saying everything you do is great, because you're a good editor. You don't do that.
it's not our job
Um,
to just give compliments, but you know what, I'm glad you mentioned this because what you did is you're opening it up to not just books. This is not
right.
just a long range or long term yes, it is, and it's
Hmm.
also, I can see how this applies to in a corporate setting, whether you're a
Yes.
staffer, a full-time an editor or senior editor, director, or even a vendor or a consultant
Hmm.
working with a corporate
Hmm.
client. Like you said, I love that you said that. It's understanding them, that
It's
they've,
understanding them,
yes.
understanding their situation. I mean, especially if I've found working in an academic space, the pressures on a writer are very particular.
Yes.
They're very specific, and really understanding what is the world that your client is operating in
Yeah.
is very, very important. It's anxiety reduction. It's,
Oh,
how do you
yeah.
help somebody kind of deal with writing is hard.
It is. It is.
And it sometimes can extend to being a safe place, a safe space where
Mhm.
people can experiment, where they can try things on and see, well, does this work? Doesn't this work?
Yeah.
Is your editor the person that you trust to sort of
Oh,
help you understand, really think through the direction you want to go with something? And and it's a confidential space.
Yeah.
I sometimes say I'm somewhere between a midwife and a priest. You know, that I'm offering a kind
Yeah.
of, I mean,
It's
for want of
true.
a better word, a very pastoral sort
Yeah.
of support
It
to people
is.
who are, to people who are trying to write something that's important to
Yeah.
them.
So tell
So
us how you do this. This is what the listeners need to hear. They want to learn from you, Bella. How do you do this? How do you interact with your clients? Do you have this, I know you wouldn't say emotional labor, quote unquote, in a contract, but I mean, how do you, I guess, approach your clients? How do you set boundaries if you need to? Share some stories. Let's do this. This is going to be so good.
so gosh, where to start with that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna sort of noodle for a little bit here.
Okay. Because I
Let me
asked
think for a
I
minute.
asked a lot. I asked,
You just asked a four-part
I
question.
did. I did. Because I want to know
um,
everything.
so, I mean, one of the things in just, first working with a client is giving them your full attention, and really listening carefully
Okay.
to what they are bringing to you. What are the things that they are struggling with? What are the things that they feel really confident about? What are the constraints that they're working within? And really sort of trying to understand where it is they're coming from. Um, some of the and I think it's also sort of important to back up a little bit
Okay.
and talk about some of the challenges
Okay.
that this sort of kind of intense um, sympathetic relationship can raise,
Okay.
because it does raise issues with
Yes.
boundaries.
Yes.
And sometimes there are things that are presented to you as an editor that are very difficult to deal
Mm-hmm.
with. And kind of have to also know your own limits and your own, the things that you will or will not work
Yeah.
on. I mean, for me personally, I do not work on things that have to do with fat phobia or diet culture. That is too raw
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
Because of my own history, because of my own sort of beliefs, and so it means I turn down work and say, I'm not gonna work on this
Good.
because it is too hard for me
Yeah.
to do this. I've gotten into situations where I'm like arguing with clients in the comments saying, but this is completely bogus. And it's like, that's not the brief, Bella.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just back
Yeah.
down. Um, and so some of what you talk about, sort of setting up those expectations,
Yeah.
comes in the contract.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
when am I available? How
Mm.
can you contact me? Because when people sort of feel, you're looking to create a bond of sympathy, and people can take that in all kinds of different directions. This is where Sarah Gray's taxonomy comes in really
Mm.
handy. She
Okay.
says, well, there's I think she had four types, if I can remember them correctly.
Okay.
There was, your new best friend, who
Mm.
just sort of wants to be with you all the time,
Okay.
the would-be lover, who kind of can't sort of engage with you except by hitting on you. Um, there's the therapist,
Okay.
the therapy client,
Okay.
and there's the VIP, who,
Okay.
because one thing about emotional labor
Mm.
is the more privilege you have, the more power you have,
Mm.
the easier it is to kind of kick it off and make somebody else do the dirty work. Um, and so that's
Oh, that's
those
interesting.
are kind of the
The
kinds
kinds of
of situations that she identified, and I thought that was
That's
just a really, really
brilliant. Oh
handy
yeah,
kind of
it is.
taxonomy
It
of
is.
the sorts of situations you can see. So,
Yeah.
making it clear, when are you available? When are
Yeah.
you not available? How friendly do you want to be with your clients? Some of my clients, I'm
Mhm.
very much so. I mean, especially the people I've worked with for a long
Yeah.
time. You really build up a kind of a
Oh
rapport.
yeah.
But sometimes with new clients, I kind of listen to them carefully. And if they're sort of sending up red flags, I'm like, okay, we're going to have a
Mhm.
slightly more um, uh, uh, formal relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to sort of, lean in for the
The
virtual
virtual
hug.
I know
I'm not going to
exactly.
share too much
Yeah.
in my emails.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yes, yes.
So, it's sort of,
Yeah.
reading the client and
Yeah.
sort of making it clear, understanding for yourself, what are you willing and not willing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I see. This is really, really interesting. I love all of this. I have to share. I've had a client in the past where, and I love all of my clients, I really do, but certain ones, when it's the two of us connecting, the time will just disappear. And
yeah,
then we would consistently go over the time. And it
yeah,
was
yeah,
really tough. And it started to get
yes,
really um it was taxing on my schedule. I had to end the meeting, but
yeah,
then it would go way over. And so then I was constantly running late, and it made me look bad for the other clients that were waiting in line for these Zoom meetings. So that was when I had to really learn to set those boundaries and really cut the
mhm,
meeting short without being, you know, it's tough sometimes. It's tough when
yeah,
you've created
yeah,
this wonderful relationship with a client, and then to say, I really
mhm,
gotta go. Peace out.
yes,
and then and then and
right,
then, and it felt so abrupt to end it, but we had such a great, it was almost a partnership because it was a
mhm,
developmental edit.
mhm,
And that's when you
right,
really become, you get to know the client on an intimate level. So
mhm,
so what do you do? I mean, what can you do if things, scope creep or whatever that term would be for a project that all of a sudden you feel like, I need to rein this in. I need to really,
mhm,
set these boundaries now that it's
mhm.
gotten a little out of that, you know.
So I have sometimes set aside 10 minutes at the beginning of a call
Mm,
for that kind of relationship building,
okay.
and then when that 10 minutes is over, then we go in, then it's business from there on out.
Okay.
And I find for me, at least, putting that at the beginning sort of lets you do that relationship work and kind of, catch up a little bit. And then you're in business mode. And when you're in business mode, it's a lot easier to stop
I love
at the
this.
end. It's like, okay, time is running out.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, sort of using your calendar can be very helpful, say, with a client who wants all of your attention. When you give
Mm,
somebody attention, they want more of
they
it. They want
do.
more of
They
it, and
do.
so they kind of chisel in to.
Hmm.
So for their, often what I'll do is, I get asked for something else, and I'll say, well, let me check my calendar,
Hmm.
and so make it clear that they are not the only person on my docket.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it's this sort of push pull thing.
Yeah.
You want them to feel in the moment
Right.
like they have your
And
complete
they
attention,
do.
that you
Yeah.
are there, and they do.
Hmm.
And then, you know, okay, I'm going to, I'm a therapist. I have many clients. I'm a pastor. I have many congregants. I'm a midwife. There are a whole lot of people in labor out there.
I love these analogies. It's
So,
so true.
you just have to kind
Yeah.
of say, all right,
Yeah.
I would love to
Hmm.
work on that with you. And
Hmm.
I'm going to have to check my availability.
Yeah.
I never say yes in the moment.
Oh, smart.
I
I love
there,
it.
there is something that I, because I'm not immune to this.
Hmm.
I love the connection. I love feeling needed.
Yeah.
It's always just a little bit of a dopamine hit,
Yeah.
when somebody says, "Oh, you're so helpful with this. Could you help me with that?"
Mm.
And it's like, well, I love feeling smart.
We all do. And then it's like, yes,
you know,
I can help
yes, of
you.
course I can help you with that. So I have learned to
Yeah.
never say
That's
yes in the moment.
such
Always
this
step back. I'll check my calendar. I'll get back
this
to
is
you.
such good advice. So now
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it go. I want to know, do you have a story to share? Do you have one? I'm going to do it. I
Ah,
love the juicy stories. Do you
the
have,
juicy
yeah, do you have
stories.
something just, even if it's a little thing, it doesn't have to be so jaw dropping, but just something where you experienced a situation because you're discovering this in academia, a
Hmm.
situation where you're like, okay, I need to reassess what I'm doing to protect
Yeah.
myself.
Yep. Yep.
This
Yep.
is
Yep.
kind of bleeding a little into self-care,
Right.
you know.
Right. Well, I mean, I think probably the first couple of years when I was starting out as a full-time academic editor, well, almost 10 years ago now.
Wow,
Um,
cool.
uh, you know, I know academia very well. I got a PhD, but I also grew up in an academic family. So, the sort of the pressures, the constraints
Yeah.
are something that I have been aware of all my life. I know they have changed a great deal, and over the last 20 years, it's pretty different from how it was when I got my degree. But it was familiar territory. I can say that. And the first couple of summers, I was not really prepared because summer is my busiest season.
Oh,
That is when most of my clients are, that's their time to work.
oh, that makes
That's their
sense.
time to, because they're not teaching, they have fewer responsibilities. It's when they're doing their research. It's when they're doing their serious writing.
Okay.
So, that's always when I get, I get a lot of queries, starting in May.
Wow.
People will start saying, what's your calendar for the summer? I've got this,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
people, there's a kind of almost a mania early in the summer. Like,
Really?
okay, the term's just ending. I've just turned in my grades. Now I'm going to write my book and I'm going to publish 3 peer-reviewed articles,
Oh my
and I'm going to do all
gosh.
this, and so there's this sense that I can do it all
Yeah.
because now I have this endless
Freedom.
summer ahead of me. And I did not really anticipate how over ambitious sometimes
Oh,
these plans could be.
okay. So what did you do? So did you overextend yourself? Did you over
That first year I did, and I
Okay.
also was not prepared for the way that people's um, uh, that people's ability to sort of perform what it was they had initially planned on doing was going to telescope everything into the last 2 weeks of August.
Oh my God.
Because so there, there was this sudden like burst of anxiety in my
Oh,
inbox at August 1st, or maybe it was August
oh my
15th,
gosh.
when suddenly everyone I had on my calendar who had not been sort of producing what they thought they were going to be doing in June and July
Okay.
suddenly realized that the academic calendar, was going to start up again in three
Oh
weeks.
my
And
God.
so
So you
and
absorbed all of this
I absorbed
anxiety.
all of that and I practically had a nervous
Oh,
breakdown.
Bella, that is so, but I'm so glad you're sharing this though, because listeners, you're helping some editor out there who maybe is not just in academia, maybe in a corporate setting. Just
Sure.
we do tend to get over I don't know, excited, or like you said, almost a
Yeah.
dopamine rush when we're like, oh yes, I would be happy to help you with this and I could do this, and
Right, right, right.
and then before they realize, all of a sudden all the deadline dates overlap, and they're like, oh, what a crazy. So how did you get through it? How did you get through it?
So, well, that I barely remember
Oh,
that.
you just
You
power.
know,
Did you just power
I just
through?
powered through
Okay.
it. I powered through it. A couple of clients were very generous and said, actually,
Okay. Okay.
I'm also kind of way behind where I want to be. Let's put this off for a couple of
Okay.
months.
Okay.
So, we kind of made it work.
So
But, I lost a lot of sleep.
yeah.
Um,
And then you told
and
yourself never again, right?
and I told
Never
myself
again.
never
Okay.
again. And I know a little bit more now about like what the dynamic is in May and early
I
June when
love
people
this.
are sort of trying to fill up my calendar, and I have enough experience to say, that sounds great, but it might be a little ambitious.
I love this. Yes.
Oh, you have a baby on the way? Yes, that's definitely too ambitious.
Oh my
Um,
God. This is so cool to
and
hear this, because I'm not as in, I have academic clients, but
Mhm,
I'm not, entrenched in academia like you are.
right.
So this is very, very insightful to hear about the
And helping
schedule.
people kind of sort out what
Yeah.
are the things that have to happen. Okay,
Yeah.
you've got your 10-year review. review coming up next semester. So you've really got to get this book done.
Yes.
Okay, let's work on
Yes.
how to do that. Actually, I've learned a lot from you, Nadia,
me.
about doing that. With the, by incorporating this coaching model where, we get, okay, we're going to set up every 2 weeks, you're going to send me some pages. We're just going to kind of parcel it out that way, bit by bit by bit. And, so I would work with my clients to set up a kind of a schedule where, if they're, facing down a really, crucial career deadline, let's make that the focus. And, what can we do to kind of break it down and sort of take it in manageable chunks? Because that's another thing about academic work. It can be very, very isolating.
It is.
And so in some ways, the role of the editor, the coach, becomes very important. I've had clients tell me that they don't feel they have anyone in their department that they can trust. Because the environment is so competitive. They're junior faculty. Maybe they're have a marginalized identity. They're a person of color. They're trans. They're first generation, and so they're kind of navigating a really, really difficult and sometimes kind of brutal environment, and they need someone who's kind of there for them in a way that is consistent and that helps them feel safe.
I love this.
And that's and for that, the sort of the regular sort of small scale check-ins, no, don't finish 4 chapters and send them to me all at once. Let's be in touch every couple of weeks, and let's kind of keep you on course so that you get through what you need to get through in the time that you have available without giving yourself a nervous breakdown.
This is so great. And what I zoned in on right now was when you said that they are depending on us, the editor. We're there for them. They feel seen. They feel heard. I think and this really honestly speaks to the heart of why I'm doing the podcast in the first place. Editors are so important for every type of project out there. Anything that gets published in any, whether it's digital, print. I mean, we really are that sounding board. And I think that any editor listening to this podcast is just going to be like, yes, I am important. We are. And I think that's so great. And it's so great to put a spotlight on emotional labor. So some words of wisdom so we can wrap up the recording, which I don't want to do, but we have to wrap this up. What are some words of wisdom, Bella? I mean, really wrapping up this topic of emotional labor. It's never going to go away. It's always relevant to what we do. What would you like to share?
I think the one thing that I would really want to underscore is that you should make sure you get paid for it. That this is often sort of seen as not real work, or it's sort of it's women's work, or men do it too. I can tell you stories about my grandpa, but I won't do it right now.
I love those stories.
But one of the things that's really important is, if it takes you an hour to write an email so that you know that it's hitting exactly the right tone, that's not because you're bad at writing emails. That's because you're doing something really hard. And so when I really started thinking about this, I got really diligent about tracking my time and using those actual time information to set my rates or to set because I often bill by the project, but that's always based on an hourly estimate of how many hours it's going to take. Okay. And so I got really, really granular about, how much time is it taking me to do the first round of comments? How much time is it taking me to do the second round of comments? How much time is it taking me to do the cleanup, where you sort of go through and take out all the snarky ones that are not going to be helpful in the long run? How much time is it taking me to write an editorial letter? If I'm sending this client a difficult email, email? How much time is it really taking me to do that? And just to sort of accept that that's how much time it takes, and that I need to be setting my my rates and my billing accordingly. And that's,
Great.
I would say that is one of the most important things that you can do, is recognize if you know that working with a particular client or working on a particular topic, you're going to need to get some support. Maybe you need to go see your therapist. Maybe you need to, build in time to kind of activate your support system. Get your friend, get your whoever it is that you talk to sort of get support in difficult times. Build that into your estimate.
I love this. This is great.
It's really, really important, because you
Yeah.
have to take care of yourself.
Yes.
You have to protect yourself, and you have to recognize that emotional work is work. So, if you can, after a difficult project, take some time off. If you can't do that, maybe you can take something that's a little less intense. Maybe you can,
Yeah.
give yourself a few days off.
I love
Maybe
this.
you can, build in a few hours to go and vent to a colleague or a friend.
Yes.
Or, like I said,
Yes.
see your therapist, because,
Yes.
if you've got one.
Yeah.
That's really, I think, important, and it will make your own work, your own practice much more sustainable in the long run. And that's, that's how you get to have the sort of wisdom and the depth of experience that allow you to be really, really helpful to clients over the long haul, when you can kind of make a difference with the people you work with. So that's my main piece of advice.
Oh my gosh, that's such good advice. I was like, in my head, I'm picturing you like at a podium and like a live audience, and everybody's like, yeah, yes. There's so much more depth to what we do, and I love that you really spoke to all of that. And so well said. I love this advice, and if I love it, I can't imagine how listeners will feel. So I am so grateful for you sharing your wisdom about what you've learned, and everything that surrounds emotional labor. So thank you again, Bella.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, listeners, I have some exciting news to share. I have officially launched the Affirmation cards for editors. Some of you may have heard about them. You've probably seen them on my Instagram page. I've talked about it on previous podcast episodes, but now they are officially here, and I am so excited to share them with you. I am holding up the box right now for the video version of the podcast. For the audio version, I'll explain to you what they look like. It's a little box, blue and green gradients with some editorial marks and some gold foil stamp on the cover, and it's just so beautiful, and it's designed by Caitlin on the Peak Publishing team. It's got a magnetic closure, and it's full of wonderful affirmations. Some background about how I made these and how I was inspired to do this was a few years ago, a friend was using affirmation cards for her life, her lifestyle. And I thought, I want to get some. But then I thought, well, I really want to get some for editors. Let me see if they exist. And lo and behold, they do not exist. And then I sparked an idea to actually create them. So these are officially the first ever affirmation cards for editors. I've set aside 3 affirmations that I'd like to read to you. And hopefully they inspire you and ignite a sense of positivity in your life. The first one says, I am a skilled and meticulous copy editor. You need to tell yourself this, remind yourself that you are skilled. You are meticulous in the way that you edit. Another one I have, is just also my second favorite, is I am committed to delivering polished manuscripts. That's our job. You're committed to this. This is what you do. It gives me that motivation as I'm editing. Last one here is my attention to detail is unmatched. Holding it up now so you can see it. These cards are meant to sit in a little wood stand that I'm holding up to show so that you can look at them every day. You could pull a new card every day, have it at your desk, make it part of your morning routine, and it's just a way to get yourself motivated, excited, and positive about the work you do, because oftentimes you question yourself. I do it all the time. Even though I have several years of experience, it's inevitable that you will question yourself and think that you might not know what you're doing, but you do know what you're doing. So take a chance to check out my website, peakpublishing.com/shop, to take a look at the cards, see what they're all about, and purchase your copy today.
Thank you for listening to the Editor's Half Hour. This podcast is your go-to resource for editorial trends, opening the discussion for new ideas through the real-life stories of editors. For more information about Nadia Jaja Pupa and her business, visit peakpublishing.com. That's PIQUE publishing.com. And remember to subscribe and follow the Editor's Half Hour wherever you get your podcasts.